Great and merciful living Father, whose holy and righteous name is Yahweh. Father, this is your servant, Yisrayl Hawkins, Father, along with all the men attending this class, Father, asking permission to our Father to come before you under the headship of our pastor and overseer, the great Kohen Yisrayl Hawkins, and by and through the authority of your Son, Yahshua Messiah. And Father, it's with great joy once again we do come before you this evening, Father Yahweh, thanking you for this great blessing of this study time that you've given to us, Father, and for the words of our pastor and overseer, the great Kohen Yisrayl Hawkins. We do pray, Father Yahweh, that you continue to bless him in his efforts, Father Yahweh, and you continue to be with him and guide him, Father Yahweh, as he clarifies your laws and prophecies for us. And we do pray that you continue to protect him, Father Yahweh, strengthen him and guide him. And we do ask all these blessings, Father Yahweh, in the name of your Son, Yahshua Messiah. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Everybody, please go ahead and be seated. And this evening we're going to be starting, or we will go through, the Roman month November, December 2010 newsletter. And this is entitled, Only Believe is a Deception of Satan and a Cause of Bullying Today. And, this particular, it starts out, it kind of goes hand in hand with what Pastor was encouraging each and every one of us on Sabbath here. He starts off here, it says, the Creator Yahweh is the only being who has ever offered an eternal position to mankind. And Pastor was trying to get that to us about the overall scope as much as we can to understand just what it is that is being offered to us. And then he continues here and he says that he is the only being, that Yahweh is the only being to lay claim to creating the earth and the heavens. He is the only being who gives a sensible reason for mankind being on earth. The churches, they don't have any answers as to why mankind is placed on the earth. They don't know. They say, well, we're just here. And when we die, they have it in their mind that they're going to be floating on a cloud forever in the clouds playing a harp. That's about the extent of what they think, of where their understanding is. And Pastor, he tells us here the name of the Creator is Yahweh. And then he goes through, and then he brings us the proofs of showing these things. And he's bringing this about for a very important reason. And as we've mentioned before, and as we have seen, as we will see today, or this evening, that one of the biggest deceptions that was brought about was the removing of the name of Yahweh, saying it's okay to refer to him as any other title that we want to. He really knows who it is who's being addressed or who's being talked to. And this is one of the foundations that we have. One of the basic things that we need to have in order to come to Yahweh's house. We have to be able to understand. We have to be able to understand the name of Yahweh, and we have to be able to understand the Sabbath. We have to be able to understand those things. In an Unger's Bible Dictionary here, we're shown. Now, this isn't anything that the House of Yahweh has written, anything like that, nothing at all. This was written, this is written by Unger. And on page 781, it shows the replacement of the name of Yahweh in your Bible. And this is under the heading of Lord. And it says Lord, the rendering of several Hebrew and Greek words which have different meanings. And then under item number 1 here, it says Jehovah, then in parentheses Yahweh, which is correct. And it shows the Hebrew YHWH. It says this is used, Yahweh is used as the proper name of God, is how he has it referred to, and should have been retained in that form by the translators. See, this Christian here, the writer here, he says that the name of Yahweh is the proper name of the Creator and should never have been removed by the translators. Well, why was it removed? Well, Yahweh willing, we'll see that here in a few minutes. And then under number 2 here it says Lord. Hebrew Adon is an early word denoting ownership, hence absolute control. And this is what the world refers to as the Creator, as Yahweh. They'll refer to him as Lord. And notice it says Lord. It is not properly a divine title. It's not a proper title to use to address our Heavenly Father Yahweh. And then Pastor, he also goes to show, he shows vowel points were also added in order to give the Hebrew words different meanings. It wasn't done to help clarify the words. It wasn't done to anything. The real meaning behind adding the vowel points was to change the words to different meanings. And we've all seen the vowel points of what they look like. It's just this little thing here, just a little dot here, or a little line, or over here, a couple of dots over here, over the letters themselves. Nothing major, just a little dot here, a little dot there. But it had really profound. It has very profound results, as we've seen here. But it says before these changes by unauthorized men took place. So these changes were never authorized. They were prophesied that they were going to take place, but they were never authorized. The names Yahweh and Yahshua were used exclusively by the prophets, the apostles, and the Savior. Now, under the heading here, Yahweh says, he says, think, the family of Yahweh is the only one that can fulfill the word of his promise. Yahweh is the only one that can fulfill his promises. But if a deceiver can get people to seek to be in the God family instead of the Yahweh family, then they will have people seeking the adversary of the Creator. And this is exactly what we see in the world today. By the simple act of changing the name of Yahweh, of taking the name of Yahweh out, you realize that there's laws that cannot be fulfilled when that name is removed. How can people seek the place that Yahweh has chosen to establish his name and go 3 times a year to learn to reverence Yahweh if that name's been removed and hidden and taken away? See, that simple little act has huge consequences. But it says the Creator is the only one who can give what he promises here. Now, Satan made herself into a god, and notice what she said to Eve. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 through 5, we see how this whole system, how this beastly system works. In verse 1 here, it says, now the serpent was more subtle and crafty than any beast of the field that Yahweh had made. So it's not going to be an overt thing. It's going to be a little dot here, a little dot there. This little word here really doesn't have that big of a consequence, does it? So we're going to make this little change here and this little change here. Well, these little changes over time, have resulted in the people forgetting the name of Yahweh. They think it's alien when you refer to Yahweh by his name. They look at you as if you're crazy. But yet, in the beginning, that's the way it was. Yahweh says, I am Yahweh, that is my name. He says, and my glory I will not give to another, nor my praises to graven images. He's not going to change his name. But he says here, it says, and the woman said to the serpent, that we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Yahweh said, you shall not eat of it, nor shall you touch it, or you will die. And then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. So here we see just a subtle twisting of the words here, and this subtle twisting of the words gave way to the deception, or to the doctrine of an immortal soul. You already have eternal life. You're not going to die by doing these things. You will live forever. For he knows that in the day that you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be as gods, knowing righteousness and evil. Now, the holy prophets in the original inspired writings, they never identified Yahweh as a god, El, or Elohim, or anything other than his name, Yahweh. This was all done by those who changed the inspired writings of the prophets and the apostles. Notice the great prophet Jeremiah said in his reference to the change of the Creator's name. So it was prophesied that this was going to take place. In Jeremiah chapter 23, 26 through 27, how long will this be in the heart of the prophets who prophesy lies? Now, these weren't the prophets of Yahweh. These were the evil men who had taken over Jerusalem by force. He says, yes, they are the prophets of the deceit of their own minds. They're relying on their own heart. They're not relying on the laws of Yahweh, but they're relying on their own heart. Who plan and scheme to cause my people to forget their name through their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, just as the fathers have forgotten my name for Baal, for Baal, or for the Lord. I looked up this word devise here in verse 27, who devise and who plan and scheme. Now this is word number 2803 in Strong's, and it means to weave. You've heard the term, to weave or to fabricate, and it means actually to weave or to fabricate, a lie, to weave these lies or to weave this deception. And it also talks about a plot. A plot. A plot is a plan to obtain or to bring something about. That's also what the word devise means. But the word plot, when I looked that up, a plot is a secret plan for accomplishing an unusually evil or unlawful end. So this wasn't something that was just, oh, we'll just call him this because it's easier. No, this was a carefully thought out plan, and it was a secret plan. It implies careful foresight in planning a complex scheme. It wasn't something simple. They had, that this was something that was, that they had really thought about. And one of the synonyms for this word plot is a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy that they did this. And a conspiracy implies a secret agreement among several people, usually involving treason or great treachery. What great treason or what great treachery? What could be greater than intentionally hiding the name of Yahweh to throw the people off the path to salvation? Because it's necessary to know the name of Yahweh in order to seek salvation. How else are they going to come to the house of Yahweh and learn? This is why we come to the feast. We're told to come to the place that Yahweh has chosen 3 times a year to learn how to reverence Yahweh, to learn how to have eternal life. This is why we come here. We learn here to come out from this deception that's in this world. If they're able to hide the name, if they're able to hide the place that we're to go, how can we get there? There's no way we can. So you can begin to see, you can see that this treason or this great treachery that is being done here. Now, there's a synonym for this. There's another, this conspiracy. There's also, it also references a word, this is called cabal, C-A-B-A-L. And this is simply a group of persons secretly united in a plot. Okay, this is that group. So now we see this just wasn't one person. Now we see this is actually involving a group. Now this also a word, as we're walking through it, also applies to a syndicate. Another word for a syndicate is a cartel. You've heard of the drug cartels, right? These gangs, a syndicate is like a cartel. It's a loose association of racketeers in control of organized crime. So now you can see that who's behind this, it's people that are involved in some type of organized crime. A syndicate is actually made up of what they call syndics. That's where the word syndicate comes from. It's made up of syndics. Now get this, it was a council or body of syndics, and that's what a syndicate is. But a syndic is a municipal magistrate. Okay, it's an elected city official. It's an official in some countries. But notice where else. And then this really kind of threw me for a loop here when I saw this. But a syndic, the people that were in control of this, is an agent of a university, the Institutes of Higher Learning. So you can see that this plan, and Pastor has taught us about this plan, to wipe out the Hebrew culture. And this is why when the children of Israel where they were taken captive and they were taken to Babylon, and they were forbidden to review, they were forbidden to study or speak the Hebrew language. They were forbidden to have any books, and they were taught in the ways of the finer things of life. They had art, they had music, they had this other culture, all in an effort to destroy their background and what they were seeking and what they were actually called to do, and to destroy them from obtaining this way of life. And it's really amazing that it goes that deep. But as talking about it, you can see here, I know there was a lot of definitions that were thrown in there, but you can actually see, who was behind this. And it wasn't something that was just a casual thing. I mean, it was something that was extremely well organized. It was secretive, and it had very evil intentions. It had evil intents behind it all along. Now the whole world praised the lords and gods, and we know this. Revelation 12:9 shows that Satan has the whole world deceived, and Pastor, he goes on and he continues to, he shows us, and the scriptures show us that we can come out from this deception, but we're told to come out from this deception. Come out from among them and be separate, says Yahweh. Do not touch the unclean thing, and I will receive you. But you can come out from this deception, he says here. In Revelation 18, 1 through 5, and after these things I saw another Malach coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was enlightened with his glory. And we know what this is representative of. Pastor has mentioned this before, it's been brought out before, that this other Malach here is actually speaking of the seventh Malach in these last days, having great authority. There is no greater authority than to come in the name of Yahweh, than to be prophesied of by the creator of the universe, by the creator of everything that we see. There is no greater authority to come in. And having this great authority, and the earth was enlightened with his glory. Yes, the earth is being enlightened slowly but surely. One person, one out of a family, two out of a country. Slowly but surely, through the satellite program, through all of these things, through the teachings that's going forth through the satellite, through the internet, through the printed word, through the recorded word. Yahweh's glory is again being made known to all nations. And he cried with them mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen. This Babylonian system is crumbling. You can see it in the news. You can see the results. You can see how it's starting to fall. And it has become the habitation of demons and the hold of every foul spirit and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations, we're shown here, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people. See, it is possible for us to come out of this world, to come out of the deception that's in this world. It has to be possible. Otherwise, we wouldn't be told to do it. Come out of her, my people, so that you do not partake in her sins, and so that you do not receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached into heavens, and Yahweh has remembered her iniquity. So Yahweh said to Adam and Eve that he was placing before them the opportunity to become a part of the Yahweh family. And this is what Pastor was trying to get, he was reiterating that to us yesterday. He says, what is required was that they had to be trained in righteous character, so that they would be able to resist the evil temptations. For this education, Yahweh placed Adam and Eve the perfect way of righteousness. This righteousness was taught in the form of laws, which include the 10 Commandments, which in these last days also include the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, which is the law of Yahweh. And within these 10 Commandments, one day, every seventh day is given as an appointment with Yahweh. This seventh day is a 24-hour character training period. And then Pastor, he shows here that Adam and Eve's training took place in what they referred to as the great garden of Yahweh, which was the garden, which was translated as the Garden of Eden, but was also translated as the great rock of Abel. Now, along with this teaching, this character education that we receive every seventh day, this 24-hour training period, along with that will come tests. Just like it was when we were in school. You can go to school all day long. You can sit there and you can learn all these subjects. You can sit here and study and study and study and study. But the only way you're going to know how well you know the material is when the teacher walks in and says, okay, pop quiz. And instead of a pop quiz in math or history, we get a pop quiz and, hey, how you getting along with your brother? Did he step on your toes today? Well, how did you react to that? These tests and stuff, they come, and they have to come. These tests, they have to come to us, because in these tests, they proved those who he calls to his house. Yahweh must trust, and it proves us. It proves us as being trustworthy, and Yahweh has to know without a doubt, that we aren't going to turn. And he says everyone agrees, and he shows here it's easy for mankind to see righteousness and agree that it's righteous. For instance, everyone agrees with the law that says don't steal, but can everyone resist stealing when the temptation comes? People are probably stealing even though they don't realize that that's what they're doing. To those who can resist and refuse to be tempted, can be trusted with the authority over property and possessions of all kinds. And this is what we're proving. We're proving ourselves obedient to the law. And we have to prove ourselves obedient to the law. And in doing that, we build trust. And Pastor he brings up, it says it's a wonderful thing to be able to trust men with your family. It's a wonderful thing not to have to worry if somebody's going to come down, if somebody's going to, going to trespass on your wife, on your son, on your daughter, on your children, on anything that belongs to you. It's a great peace knowing that isn't going to take place. It's also a devastating blow of Satan, Pastor shows here, when a man learns that his wife has been defiled by another man, or his daughter has been seduced, or even with what's going on in the news lately, or that your son was raped by your priest, Pastor shows here, and as the news is showing. Such evil is taught against by Yahweh. Yahweh's kingdom will be safe from all such evils. And it's going to be safe because those who are going to enter into that kingdom will have proved themselves trustworthy. They will have succeeded. We will have succeeded in going through these tests and these trials. And Yahweh's going to know what's in our character. And we see this through Yosef. Yosef was the son of Jacob, and Jacob was the second-born of Isaac, and Isaac was the son of Abraham. And we know that Abraham, Genesis chapter 26, verse 5 shows that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, kept my laws, statutes, commandments, and judgments. And for this reason, Abraham was a friend of Yahweh, because he was faithful in all that Yahweh had him do, and all that Yahweh was instructed him to do. Now, Yosef was a result of the teaching of Abraham that came from Yahweh. And then, again, in the beginning was the plan of Yahweh. Yochanan chapter 1, verse 1 through 13, we see that in the beginning, Yahweh had a plan. And in this plan, everything was done according to it. And there isn't anything that is being done outside of this plan. And we can rest assured that every single thing that we see going on that is taking place in the world is all being done according to Yahweh's plan. If it's not in Yahweh's plan, it's not going to take place. In this plan was life, and that life was the light to mankind. Now that light shines in darkness, but the darkness does not take hold of it. There was a man sent from Yahweh whose name was Yochanan. Now Yochanan came as a witness that he might testify of the light, and that all men through the light might be saved. Now that was the true light, which lights the way to the kingdom for every man that comes into the world. Well, if you remember, Proverbs chapter 6:23 shows us that the laws of Yahweh are the commandments of Yahweh. They're a lamp. Then the law is a light. Okay, the commandments are a lamp. The law is light, and reproofs of instruction are the way to life. These reproofs of instruction are the way to life. Okay, and that should bring up another scripture which shows in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16 through 17, where it shows that all scripture given through the inspiration of Yahweh is profitable for doctrine. It's profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of Yahweh may become perfect, thoroughly furnished for every righteous work. So this is why, this reproof. Now, this reproof, to reprove means it's a form of correction. Okay? It doesn't mean that we're going to be yelled at or we're going to be screamed at or anything like that. Actually, to reprove actually means to scold or correct. But it's usually done in a gentle manner, in a gentle way, through a teaching way, or with kindly intent. It's not harsh. And we see that. We see that exhibited through our pastor and overseer in the way that he gets up here and deals with each and every one of us, either individually or collectively as a group when he appears before us on Sabbath. We are being corrected. We're being corrected constantly. Now, Psalm 19:7, shows that the laws of Yahweh are perfect. Remember that the scriptures, that the man of Yahweh may become perfect, thoroughly furnished for every righteous work. We have to become perfect, and the only way we can is by submitting ourselves to these laws of Yahweh, because they are perfect, as Psalm 19:7 shows, and they will convert the whole person, but they'll only convert us to perfect righteousness if we allow Yahweh to do so, and we do that simply by submitting to the voice of Yahweh, just as Abraham did, just as Isaac did, just as Jacob did. Just as Yeshua, the perfect example, just as Yeshua did. Yeshua submitted completely to Yahweh. And we see the end result of that. We see the end result of what Yahweh's laws will bring. He was a perfect man, and in him was no sin. But in Yochanan 1:17, it shows here, it says, for the laws were given through Moshe, that the truth and salvation should come through Yahshua Messiah. And Yahshua Messiah, remember, Yahshua was prophesied. That's where Yahshua Messiah got his authority. He got his authority through the law and through the prophets. It's the exact same place that the house of Yahweh gets their authority today. It's the same place where our pastor and overseer gets his authority today. It's because pastor was prophesied through the prophets of old. Let me see where I want to go here. There's a whole lot of scriptures here that refer to, that show that Yahshua, he was prophesied. That show that Yahshua was prophesied here. Yochanan 1:45. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moshe and the laws and the prophets wrote of, Yahshua of Nazareth, the son of Yosef." In Yochanan 15:24, I'll jump down to 24 here. It says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who hears my words, that is my teachings pertaining to the law and the prophets, believing Yahweh who sent me, has everlasting life." Now, if you remember the title of this article here, says, "Only believe as a deception of Satan and a cause of bullying today." Well, believing Yahweh who sent me has everlasting life and will not come under condemnation, but has passed from death to life. Now, the Christians will take hold of that. They'll take, okay, well, we have to believe we have to believe Yahweh who sent the Savior, and in that we're going to have everlasting life. Okay, I believe. Yeah, but they have no idea that belief has a lot more than just having faith or having trust in. They don't realize, or if they do realize, they just kind of push it aside, that along with belief, if we say that we believe in Yahweh, if we say that we believe the things that Yahweh teaches, if we believe what our pastor and overseer teaches, we're going to have to do what he says, because the Apostle Yaakov, he show me your faith, show me your belief without your works, and I'll show you my faith, I'll show you my belief by my works. He says, you believe there is one Father? He says, you do well. There was a priest. There was a priest one time. He quoted that, and he said, if you believe, you do well. He says, but you know what? He says the demons believe, and they tremble. And that priest at one time, he says, these people that just have this belief, he says now they're at the same level that the demons are, because they have that belief, but they don't follow through with it. They don't follow through. But we have to have that faith with that works, because it's through our works that we prove our faith, that we prove our belief. It says, truly I say to you, the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of Yahweh, and those who hear will live. Yochanan 5:27-29, and has given him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man. Do not be astonished at this, for the hour is coming in which all who are in the grave will hear his voice, and will come forth. Those who have practiced righteousness will be resurrected in order to live, and those who have practiced wickedness will be resurrected in order to be damned. Please notice the requirements. Number one, we must believe Yahweh who sent Yahshua. And Yochanan 5:24, we see this, truly I say to you, that he who hears my words, my teachings pertaining to the law and the prophets, believing Yahweh who sent me, has everlasting life. So we have to have that full faith, we have to have that full belief, we have to have that full trust. And if we trust in what our pastor is teaching us, if we trust in the laws of Yahweh, if we trust in the scriptures themselves, then we're going to do exactly what they say. And he tells us to compare Luke 24:25, and he said to them, O fools and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. In Revelation 21:8, it says, but the fearful and unbelieving, notice the unbelieving here, and notice who they're grouped with, the fearful and the unbelieving. Notice who they're grouped with here. It says, and the abominable, and the murderers, and the whoremongers, and sorcerers, and worshippers of gods, and all liars, will have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Now, that word fearful can mean one word, one like meaning to that, or synonym to that can be, they can be afraid, or they can be timid. And being timid simply means lacking in courage, lacking in boldness or determination. Yahshua, he said, be strong. Yahshua ben Nun said, and when in the first and second chapters there of Yahshua, he was addressing the people, and he constantly told them, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Have this courage and have this confidence, have this boldness, have this determination. He was building the people up, and this is the same thing that Pastor does with us. He goes over these prophecies. He shows us where these prophecies are fulfilled so that we can have that full faith and that full trust and that full confidence in the laws of Yahweh, in the prophecies of Yahweh. Now, this word fearful also means to be afraid. Now, afraid suggests a weakening or cowardice, and regularly implies inhibition of actions or utterance, as in afraid to speak the truth. Now, the fearful, when the testing and persecution comes, you're going to have some who are going to be fearful, some who are going to be afraid, and they're going to have that weakening, and they're not going to be able to. They're not going to have that courage or that boldness, that determination to stand in their place. And we've seen this. We saw this when Pastor was arrested. We saw the majority of people in Yahweh's house stay in their place. They stood here. They, despite the things that were coming, despite the threats, despite the rumors that were going around, but they stood in their place. While others, as Pastor would say, their backbone turned to jelly or back to water, and they just kind of scattered off, and they just, went every which way. The fearful, they're going to have the same place. The fearful and unbelieving they're all going to have their place along with those who are abominable, the murderers and the whoremongers and sorcerers. And all liars are going to have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is that second death. So when the testing comes, and that testing, brothers, I'm afraid that testing was probably pretty mild compared to what's going to be coming down the road. So when the testing and persecution comes, we need to take hold of everything that Pastor is teaching us. We know the prophecy. We know this house is not going to be allowed to be put in the grave. Yahweh promises that. And He is the one that is going to fulfill that promise. He is going to make sure that this house is not put in the grave. So what do we have to be afraid of? We're here. We're standing in Yahweh's house. We're striving to become perfect. We're striving to enter into this narrow gate, to enter into this kingdom of Yahweh. We're striving in overcoming sin. We're trying to get our characters perfect. What in the world do we have to fear? What can they do out here to us? Nothing Yahweh wouldn't allow. If Yahweh allows it, guess what? It's in Yahweh's plan for that to take place. And whether we stay here or whether we think we're going to be safe and tuck tail and run, if it's in the plan of Yahweh that we're going to suffer certain things, guess what? It's coming. We will suffer those things. Just like Yeshub did. Look at the things that Yeshub went through. He could have easily tuck-tailed and ran. He could have. There's a lot of things that he could have done. He could have sat there and he could have blamed Yahweh. He could have lost his temper, lost his self-control, and he didn't do that. He said, Yahweh, these things have to be coming upon me because of something that I've done. He didn't seek to blame anybody else, and he didn't speak evil of Yahweh for allowing these things to come upon him. But that was all a test. That was all part of that. You can read how Satan came against him in the first 2 chapters of the book of Yeshub. And remember that Satan can only go as far as Yahweh allows. And that's what those first 2 chapters show. Because Yahweh always gave her limits. You know what? You can come against him. You can take all that he has, but you can't touch him. You can't touch him. You can take his family. You can take everything he owns. You can do whatever you want to, but you can't touch him. And you know what? It's exactly what took place. She couldn't do a darn thing until Yahweh gave her the permission to do so. and then she can only go as far as Yahweh allowed. So when these tests and trials come along, men, remember that. Remember remember these things, that these are, that these tests are for the building of our character. You look at Yosef here. Yosef was a shining example here. Yosef was a shining example. I mean, he found honor in the eyes of Yahweh. And remember, he was Potiphar, remember, made him an overseer in his house. And we see this here in Genesis chapter 39, verse 1 through 10. And so, Potiphar entrusted him with all of these things. But that wasn't the test. The test came, when after a while that he was there, Potiphar's wife cast longing eyes upon him, and she said, "Lie with me." Come on, he'll never know. He's gone. He won't be back for days. But he refused and said to his owner's wife, "My owner does not concern himself with what I do in his house, and he has committed all that he has to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept anything back that he has, except you, because you are his wife. How then could I commit such a great wickedness and sin against Yahweh?" And though she spoke to Yosef day after day, continually coming after him, come on, just trying to wear him down, just after him, constantly wearing him down, trying to wear him down, he refused to carnally lie with her or even to be with her. So you can see how, he stood, he stood, and he didn't, he didn't waver, he didn't turn to the right or to the left. Now Yahweh was with Yosef because Yahweh practiced righteousness. He practiced the laws of Yahweh, and this is the same reason that Yahweh was with Yeshua, because being in the perfection, let me see here, in Hebrews chapter 1 through 3 and verse 8 and 9, shows Yahweh, who at various times and in different ways spoke in times past to our fathers through the prophets, and he has in these last days spoken to us through his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, for whom he has also made the world, who, being in the reflection and perfection of Yahweh, and the representation of Yahweh's plan, by upholding all things concerning that which was spoken of by Yahweh through the law and the prophets, when he had purged sins, sat down at the right hand of Yahweh on high. Notice the part there that's underlined, who, being in the reflection and perfection of Yahweh. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 and 27. He was made in the image and likeness of Yahweh. We see a man, just as each and every one of us is a man here, was brought into the image and likeness of Yahweh through the laws of Yahweh. And we can see, we see the results of that here. Now, Yahweh calls heaven and earth to witness the plan for removing sin and suffering. And Pastor shows here, he says, it's stupidity to think that Yahweh would put evil, sinful men and women in charge of removing sin and evil from the earth and the heavens. As Pastor would say, that's like putting the fox in charge of the hen house. He says, mankind was created for the purpose of teaching the nations peace, joy, and true love and abundant living, not unlawful lust, hatred, violence, and war. And to those who keep Yahweh's laws, as Abraham, are being judged and chosen because of their faithfulness. And then notice the words here, Yeshua's words here in Revelation chapter 17, verse 14. It shows that these will make war with the Lamb, but the Lamb will overcome them. For he is the ruler of rulers and King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. Now the Savior's words show his judgment is just. Yachanan 5:29, and will come forth, for those who have practiced righteousness will be resurrected in order to live. Okay, so and this is something that we've read already, and those who have practiced wickedness will be resurrected in order to be damned. So this is the judgment. This is the judgment that we see here. And then Yeshua, he continues to tell us, he continues to show us here. Notice further the words of the Savior in Luke 13:22 through 28. And then he went through the cities and the villages, teaching and journeying toward Jerusalem, when one said to him, Teacher, are there few who are saved? And he said to them, Strive, that is, contend for, or exert oneself to enter in at the narrow gate. It's work. It's hard work overcoming sin. It's hard work overcoming these darn habits, these darn habits and stuff that we've picked up over the years before we came to Yahweh's house. But we're to contend for, we're to exert ourselves and put our heart in our effort into overcoming these sins, so we can enter into the narrow gate. For many, I say to you, will seek to enter in, but will not be able to. The whole world is seeking to enter into this narrow gate. And they think they've got it. They think that way is paved for them. But they're not going to be able to enter. For when once the ruler of the house has risen up and shut the door, you will begin to stand outside to knock at the door and say, Teacher, teacher, open for us. And he will answer and say, I do not know you, nor where you are from. But then you will begin to say, We ate and drank in your presence, and you were taught in our streets. But he will say, I will tell you, I do not know who you are. Get away from me, all you workers of iniquity. All you workers of iniquity. We know iniquity is the pushing aside of the law of Yahweh. It's the practicing of wickedness, practicing of sin, and pushing aside the law of Yahweh. And there will be, notice verse 28, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth when you say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of Yahweh, and you yourselves thrust out. I mean, what a horrible, that just paints such a horrible picture in the mind. We know, the scriptures show that the wheat and the tares will grow together, and they're going to be allowed to grow together. But and when the people, who insist on practicing iniquity or who insist on practicing sin and don't put the effort in overcoming, put forth that effort, when they see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or their brothers and sisters, their sons, the people that they've worked with, or the people they maybe sat next to Sabbath in, when they see their, those people that they knew enter into the kingdom of Yahweh and they themselves thrust out, you can imagine the weeping and gnashing of teeth that would take place. Why didn't I pay attention? Why didn't I listen? Why didn't I try harder to do these things? Why didn't I, whatever it is. Why did I insist on continuing to eat that darn pepperoni pizza? That's going to seem like a small thing at that time, but by that time, as we're shown here, it's going to be too late. But Yahweh is building an eternal kingdom of people who will keep and teach his laws, therefore becoming perfect as he is perfect. And this includes men, women, and children who are hated by Satan but loved by Yahweh. And again, we're shown this final judgment. This final judgment is actually shown here again in Revelation chapter 20, verse 11 through 15, where in verse 11 here, it shows, and I saw a great white throne and him who sat upon it, whose face the powers of the earth and the powers of the heavens and the gods were driven away, for the verdict was reached that there was no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before Yahweh, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of the things that were written in these books according to their faith, according to their belief. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I got the wrong version. According to their works. And then verse 15, and whoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. And verse 13 shows shows actually that the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and Sheol, the grave, were delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every man according to his works. It was repeated twice. Usually when we're in school and the teacher's teaching us something, in history or something, they will give you a warning. They'll say, listen, if I mention something twice, you better write it down, you better underline it, you better highlight it, you better take note of it, because it's going to be on the test. Well, the same thing holds here, that the dead were judged out of the books, out of the things which were written in the books, according to their works. According to their works. Revelation 22, 12 through 16, and behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according as his work will be. Well, there's a third time. Within 2 chapters there, the third time that it's written. Blessed are those who keep the laws, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter into the gates through the city. For outside, those who are not going to be allowed in are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and worshippers of gods, and everyone who professes to love, yet practices breaking the laws. They're not going to be allowed in. Now, this promise The promise of Yahweh was given in Genesis 1:26, where he says, I will make man in my image according to my likeness. And they will have rulership over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing which creeps upon the earth. Yeshua was the first righteous man to be born into the family of Yahweh. Now, the heavens know the plan of Yahweh to bring righteous rulers who will rule as Yahweh. The name Yisrayl, remember, the name Yisrayl means he who rules as Yahweh. The heavens know this plan of Yahweh, and they earnestly wait. And these beings, they earnestly wait for them to be revealed, for these people, for these teachers, these righteous rulers. They earnestly wait for them to be revealed to begin the process of bringing peace to the universe. Romans 8:19, for the earnest expectation of the creation waits for the revealing of the sons of Yahweh. Well, they're waiting on us. They're waiting on us to get this righteous character built within us so the plan of Yahweh can continue to move forward. The plan of Yahweh is a much-needed plan in heaven as well on earth because the heavenly beings are suffering oppression just as we are on the earth. The uncertainty of life in the heavens is as it is on earth. There is sickness, disease, confusion, violence, and fighting, and war taking place in the heavens also. Although it's difficult for us to comprehend that, it's difficult for us to see this, but this is where we need to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Because it's shown, right? It's shown here. It says, the cause for vacant planets in the heavens are the same cause for the earth becoming void. And we see that here in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. In the beginning, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth became without form and empty, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. It wasn't created that way, but it became that way through the actions of people, through certain actions here. And it says that the Hebrew, this word without form means chaos, a vain, worthless things, full of God worship, the worship of Elohim. The word darkness is the Hebrew word kashak, and shows that this word means, the Hebrew and Chaldea lexicon of the Old Testament by Julius First on page 501, shows that this word means to be led astray. To be led astray because of false doctrine, misery, death, destruction, ignorance, wickedness, and sorrow. But notice, to be led astray because of false doctrine. What did they do with the name of Yahweh? The organized crime. They devised, they planned, and they schemed, they plotted to cause the people to forget the name of Yahweh for Baal, for Lord, for God, for whatever they want to call, for whatever words that they wanted to use. That was the organized plan. That was the organized plan of Satan, a very well thought out plan. That's what she wanted to accomplish, and that's exactly what she has accomplished. Now Yahweh shows us a shining example of mankind, what mankind produces when there is no righteous teacher to guide and teach righteousness. And we know that in Genesis chapter 4, it shows that Abel was a keeper of a sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And when we see that Cain rose against Abel and killed him, and Pastor has shown us that this word keeper of the sheep means a teacher of righteousness, and that or a teacher of virtue, and virtue means a quality of moral righteousness or excellence. Building moral excellence. I think, isn't that the title of something in the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program? Isn't there a black book called Building Moral Excellence? But this is what Abel was. Abel was a teacher of righteousness or moral excellence. Therefore, the phrase keeper of the sheep is translated as teacher of righteousness. But the phrase tiller of the ground, which refers to Abel's brother Cain, shows that he was a servant of the gods and man. Now, these definitions show us clearly that Abel was a priest of Yahweh and Cain was a priest of God or the gods. Without righteous teachers, the earth quickly turned to corruption, as we also see throughout the world today. And less than 1,500 years after Abel's death, the earth became corrupt. 1,500 years was all it took. In Genesis chapter 6, 5 through 13, and Yahweh saw that wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent or thoughts of man's heart was only evil continually. The same thing that we see today. But there was a man. There was a man that was alive at that time, and that man's name was Noah. And Noah was a just man. He was perfect in his beginnings, and Noah walked in the reverence of Yahweh. So despite the wickedness that was on the earth, there was a righteous man that walked on the face of the earth. And the earth we see at that time was corrupt before Yahweh, and the earth was lawless, and it was filled with violence. Same thing that we're seeing out today. Just as Noah was a just man, perfect in his beginnings, walking in the reverence of Yahweh, we see the same thing with our pastor and overseer today. In this earth, when sin has reached its peak, and we think it can't get any worse, that we're on the brink, as the news was showed yesterday, we get to the brink of just total collapse, of total annihilation. And it's going to get to the point where eventually 4/5 of the earth's population is going to be wiped out. But in this time period, we see a man named Buffalo Bill, Yisrayl Hawkins, our pastor and overseer. We see a man perfect in his beginnings and walking in the reverence of Yahweh and bringing a final warning to this world, this final warning of what their way is going to bring. And this man, our pastor, is going to usher in, again, Yahweh shows that this western lamp is not going to be allowed to be put out. This era of the house of Yahweh that we are sitting in here today will not be allowed to be put into the grave. We need to put our faith we need to put our full trust in that and just work headlong on overcoming anything that will separate us from Yahweh. We need to make sure that we need to make sure that we stand in our place. Now, from Noah until now, from Noah, Yahweh brought forth righteous men who kept and taught the laws of Yahweh. From their seeds, thousands upon thousands have lived and died. Now, righteousness is being taught. The righteousness here, Pastor shows, being taught in today's religions is incomplete, and it's imperfect, and it's stained with God worship of pagan holidays. It's actually it's all mixed in. It's mixed in. You see a mixture. The same mixture that was in the Garden of Eden that you saw. You had the tree of righteousness, or the tree of life, and you had the tree of the knowledge of righteousness and evil. You have that same mixture today. Now, the laws of Yahweh are a complete righteousness. And Pastor, he shows us here, what could be more righteous than teaching your children not to steal? What could be more than what could be worse than having a thief in the family or as one of your neighbors? Nothing could be more worse, Pastor shows here, unless it's a murderer. But the religions ignorantly teach the children to do all of these things, to steal, to covet, to lust. The school bullying is a problem that is going to affect everyone soon because it's so widespread. And it's been getting worse and worse and worse. As each year passes, it gets worse and worse. Yeah, I worked with the school district for probably 10 years, 12 years, something like that. And I eventually had to get out of there because it was getting bad. You could see the violence getting worse in the schools. You could see the conduct of the students getting worse. You could see the way that the total disregard for any authority. It was gone. It was non-existent. People would talk back to their parents, and their parents would sit there and take it. And you say, why would you allow your son to talk to you that way? Or why would you allow your daughter to talk to you in that manner? Oh, they do it all the time. It's okay. No, it's not. That's why we have the problems. That's part of the problems out here. That's probably part of the problems that we have now, is because there's no moral education that's taking place. It was all done away with. The religions have done away with that. And it's taught by the religions, and this is why you see bullying. And the reason we can say it's taught by the religions is because the religions do away with these laws of Yahweh that would prevent such a thing. And their solution, as Pastor says here, what a stupid solution. Do you think karate might suggest a gun, knife, or bomb? What has war and fighting ever solved? It hasn't solved a thing. The world has now built the most devastating weapons against bullying. The problem with weapons is that they teach bullying and encourage people to become bullies. And it's just the same thing that we saw, the curse of Cain, the continual war, vengeance, and retaliation. That's all it breeds. It never breeds a solution. There is no solution in man's way. The only solution is in these laws of righteousness. And this is the message that goes forth from this house. This is the message that Pastor that Yahweh has taught forever. And this is a message that's also going out, the same message through the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Now, bullying is also taught in the churches. And these wonderful laws written in the inspired scriptures, they teach love and concern for others. Actually, more care and concern and the love for others rather than their self are taught in these laws. But yet these laws are done away with. They constantly do away with these things. And Yachanan Mark, chapter 12 and verse 30, we're told that we must love Yahweh our Father with all our heart, soul, and with all our might. And that was the greatest commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And upon those two things, depend all the law. That is a general overview of the law. A very broad overview. Now, the Ten Commandments are a broad overview of the law because that is an outline of the entire law of Yahweh. Well, so are these two commandments that were given by Yahshua, except it's much broader. But in those two laws, all of the 613 laws are encompassed. Leviticus 19:18, do not seek revenge nor bear a grudge against one of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor, whether a brother or enemy, as yourself. Treat him according to the law of Yahweh. The religions say that the apostles did away with the laws of Yahweh. Some say the Savior did away with them. But Yahshua was very clear. He said, I didn't come to destroy the law of the prophets. I didn't come to destroy these things. I came to establish them. I came to fully teach them and set an example to show you that they can be kept and how they can be kept. And ultimately what the result is, the end result of keeping that law. Now the apostles call the religious leaders who say they did away with the laws of Yahweh that would stop bullying and violence. He calls them liars. Now, 1 Yachanan 2:4 shows that he who says, I know him, but does not keep his laws is a liar, and the truth is not in him. And we see, that when this is done, when these laws are done away with, we see, what's written here in Isaiah chapter 24, verse 1 through 6. We see the result, the ultimate result of that. Before Yahweh's very eyes, the earth is made empty. It's made empty. And it is made waste. The face of it is perverted, and its inhabitants are scattered abroad. And we see it will be as with the people, so with the priests. Verse 2 shows that it encompasses everybody. Everybody is affected. The people, the priests, servants, owners, maids, mistress, buyers, sellers, lenders, borrowers. It doesn't matter. It encompasses and affects everybody. Now, when it shows that the earth is made empty, it's devoid of sense. And we can see that. It's devoid of sense. It's devoid. It's empty. It doesn't have any sense. You see foolishness throughout the world. Look at their solutions for bullying. Look at their solutions for peace. Let's get these bigger bombs. Yeah, that's going to do it. Hasn't worked in 6,000 years. What makes them think it's going to work now? But it also is marked by the absence of human life, activity, or comfort. Yeah, there's no life in here. The world is full of death. But we see here the land will be utterly emptied and utterly plundered, for Yahweh has spoken this word. The judgments, we've got to remember the judgments. These are the judgments of Yahweh, and the breaking of Yahweh's laws, when the breaking of Yahweh's laws result in these judgments coming about. And the earth mourns and fades away, and the world mourns and fades away, and the haughty people of the earth languish. Those who are blatantly proud, the languish. The haughty people of the earth, those who are blatantly proud. The proud people of the earth languish. They become, when they languish, they become feeble, they become weak. They live in a state of depression. You can't go, if you watch the news, how many commercials do you see for antidepressants simply watching the news? It's constant. Well, you've got this for you got this antidepressant, but you got to watch it because when you're on this, you may have an increased risk of suicide. So we're going to add this to it, another antidepressant to help this other one along. It's again, you see the foolishness, but you see the proud people the people who are so blatantly proud, than to come and sit at the feet of an Okie and learn the way to salvation. They're languishing. They're languishing in this. They're feeble. They're weak. They have a decreasing vitality. The life that is in them is going away. People want bullying stopped. They want some of it stopped, but not all of it. And the bullying, the things that we're seeing, it's eventually going to be stopped. Isaiah chapter 2 shows that in 2 and verse 3 it says, many people will say, come and let us go up to Abel, to the mountain, to promote praise Yahweh, to the house of the father of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, his laws, and we will walk in his paths. For the laws and the word of Yahweh will be restored to Abel by those who keep all of his laws and who are taught by the priest who teaches peace. He will judge among the nations and will rebuke many people through this teaching, through this constant teaching that goes forth from this house. They will beat their swords into plowshares and the spears into pruning hooks, and nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn war anymore. This is what the world is waiting on. The world is waiting for us to be able to take on these roles, the role as a teacher to go out and to teach this way of peace. It's what the universe is waiting on. We saw that just a little bit ago. This deceptive teaching, the deception, the deception is subtle in the world. And I know we talked a lot. A lot of this here was going over the plan of Yahweh and the laws of Yahweh and believing in the prophets and believing in the prophecies. But it was necessary to show that because it was necessary to show the results that come from following these laws. We can see very clearly the results that come from breaking the laws out in the world here today. But this is the solution. This is the only solution that is going to work. The peaceful solution, the laws of Yahweh, the peaceful solution character education program. The laws of Yahweh are the only thing that are going to bring peace to the universe. Nothing else will. Well, men, that's it. May Yahweh be with you and bless you. May Yahweh bless your understanding. And in closing here, Pastor shows here, he says, and this is one final thought, kind of keep this in our minds. He says, you will not survive what is coming next on this world, being brought about by religious impostors, teaching bullying, teaching the breaking of the law of Yahweh, unless you repent of following them and convert to practicing these laws of righteousness, or convert to practicing this peaceful solution. May Yahweh be with you and bless you, men. May Yahweh bless your work week. If everybody you're already standing, we'll go ahead and we'll close. Great and merciful Father, whose holy and righteous name is Yahweh, this is your servant, Kohan Yisrayl Hawkins, Father, along with all the men attending class here, Father, and those scattered abroad listening, Father. We do ask permission to come before you under the headship of our pastor and overseer, the great Kohan Yisrayl Hawkins, and through the authority of your Son, Yahshua Messiah. And Father Yahweh, we do thank you again for this great blessing, this opportunity to study your laws and to hear the prophecies, Father Yahweh. And we do pray that you would bless each and every one of us as we go forth this week, Father Yahweh, and that you would help us in our efforts, Father Yahweh, to convert to your righteous character, Father. And whenever our tests and trials and tribulations do come upon us, Father Yahweh, help us to remember these things and help us always to make the right choices, Father Yahweh, to choose the peaceful solution always, Father Yahweh, so that we can truly benefit and not only benefit ourselves, Father Yahweh, so that we can be counted worthy, Father Yahweh, to stand in our place and to be a benefit not only to the rest of this world, Father Yahweh, but also to your entire universe. We pray that you continue to bless your house, Father Yahweh, and all your people with protection and guidance, Father. We pray for our great Kohan Yisrayl Hawkins, Father Yahweh. We do pray also for his protection and guidance, Father Yahweh, and we do look forward to the time that you will reunite him with us here at Abel and bring him safely to us. And Father, we do love you, praise you, and thank you for everything that you've given to us. And we do ask all these things in the name of your Son, Yahshua Messiah. Hallelujah.